And with that, we turn to the analysis of Shields and Brooks. That is Syndicated columnist Mark Shields and New York Times columnist David Brooks. Welcome, gentlemen. Well, what a week, and it keeps on coming. David, these allegations against Donald Trump, some of them we can't even describe in full here on this program. He said they're very graphic. He says they didn't happen. These are all lies. Is this just more of the same, or have we reached a new low?
I guess we've always reached a new low, Judy, every Friday. So our weekly basis. His case would be better if he hadn't bragged about doing exactly what he's alleged to have done. And so, you know, when you get 5 or 6 these people coming out, some of whom had said things contemporaneously, I don't know, it's dispositive, but it's kind of compelling. And the fact that we're talking about a major presidential candidate behaving this way in 2016 is kind of astounding. And the fact that the guy's still walking, and the guy has a lot of support among a lot of decent people, I don't know what the word is. And so you're just gobsmacked, as the British would say, surprised out of your wits' end that we're here.
Gobsmacked, Mark?
Yeah, I've never been gobsmacked, but I know David has been. And I just have to say, Judy, it amazes me that anybody with anything approaching this in his background, the tape alone would run for president. I mean, given the
you mean the Access Hollywood tape?
Yeah, the Access Hollywood. I mean, irrespective of these charges, and the charges are quite serious. But I mean, and I had one Republican remind me today, well, how did Denny Hastert accept the speakership with that in his background? So, but you know, I don't know at what point you start to think that you're invisible or just bulletproof. And that I have to say that the singular impressive moment of the week to me was Michelle Obama. It was because she took it out of a, you know, sort of a men should be ashamed or whatever into a, and women have victims, you know, into a very, I thought, a human terms, and spoke about the pain and the outrage that she felt. And if you're talking about somebody as an unassailable critic, she is, A, the most popular political figure in the country. She's the best-known mother and mother of 2 daughters, wife, a professional woman, and happens to be African-American. But I just thought authentic in a year that's been synthetic in so many respects, and as we hear about campaigns and what's going on, I just thought that was an authentic moment, and I thought it was a defining moment of this campaign.
And a sign of sort of national malaise that we are all dragged into because of the conversations we have to have. And I will say
we have to talk about it.
Yeah, and I will say one other thing, you know, Oppo research gets a bad name. You shouldn't go after your opponents, you shouldn't dig them up. But if Marco Rubio and Jeb Bush or John Kasich had decent Oppo research and had unearthed this in the primary season, they would have spared the country a lot of turmoil and their own party a lot of self-destruction.
So you think they should have been doing this?
Well, I mean, things should come up. They had a lot of candidates in that race, and once the Republicans had a lot of decent choices, they could have flipped away from Trump to somebody they could have stomached, and it would have been fine. But now, and you watch a lot of Republicans who just feel like they're locked in. And then you feel other Republicans who are just in some sort of morally incoherent state. Last week, a couple senators were calling for Trump to step down, then he didn't step down, and now they're saying, oh, we'll vote for him, which is morally incoherent. If you want him to step down, you can't vote for the guy to be president of the United States. And then you have a lot of people saying, I'll just play it cool. I'll just be with him, I'll be a good Republican, and then when he goes away, I'll just be fine. That is not the case. This is not like supporting Barry Goldwater in 1964. This is like supporting Joe McCarthy, and you will not be fine. And a lot of the people who are just hanging around on the fence or alienating both sides by being somewhere in the middle will not be recovering so easily, I do not believe.
How do you explain their calculus?
Well, I think the people who switched last weekend after the Access Hollywood tape are the ones who are in the most trouble. Politically. I think it was a politically...
You mean because they waited until...
Well, first of all, if I'm a Trump supporter, a loyal Trump supporter, this is his hour of maximum peril. And these are the people who picked up the knife and plunged it into his back when he was really hurting. And I won't forget that as a Trump supporter. If I'm one of the people like Mitt Romney or Ben Sasse of Nebraska, who early on said this man is unacceptable, I have a legitimate question to say, wait a minute, what was it that finally tipped it. I mean, it wasn't the judge. I mean, it wasn't libeling Mexican immigrants. It wasn't libeling prisoners of war and their courage or whatever else. I mean, nothing else he did, libeling women throughout. But this did it because he became politically radioactive at that point. So I think in that sense, and I've already seen it in a poll, a congressional poll, where a Republican member who had changed by a 2-to-1 margin, the constituents in a post-weekend poll regarded it as an act of opportunism rather than political courage. So I think David's categories are right, that it is a difficult thing to do. But if, in fact, he loses and they lose the Congress, and Republicans lose the Congress, and I think that's the key. If that happens, then association with him will have been regarded as a permanent stain, or not standing up to him and calling him for what he's done.
And this is sort of a psychological question. What happens, say he loses, what happens the next day? Is there all the Trumpians saying, no, we were robbed, we're sticking by our man, we're going into some sort of revolt? Or is it, that guy was always a loser, and I'm putting that behind me? My intuition about the psychology is the latter is more likely, that people are just going to throw Trump to history, and then a lot of the sense that mass revolt, this was not legitimate, I don't think that's likely to happen.
Could I just a little dissent there? I think the reaction is, Judy, whether the Republicans see themselves as a congressional party or a presidential party. If Donald Trump loses badly, okay, and Republicans lose the Congress, lose the Senate, and lose the House, which is, for this first week, people are talking about, Republicans are even talking about it. If that would have happened, then they say, well, in 2018, we're going to come back. Because the natural sequence of things, Republicans then return to a majority. This is what Democrats went through. 1980, 1984, and 1988, the Democratic presidential candidates won a total of 17 states in 3 presidential elections, cumulatively. But they kept the Congress. So it insulated the congressional party. And they said, oh, it was just the candidates' fault. If the Republicans, take a whipping across the board and they say, my God, we're doing something wrong, not just at the presidential level, but the congressional level, then I think you'll see the soul searching.
But I want to ask you both about what happens to the country. I know we're still 3.5 weeks away, but what happens to the country after this election, David? I mean, there are people at Trump himself is saying this thing is rigged, it could be stolen. People are booing the press. They cheer him on when he says the country, there's a big conspiracy. How do you put anything together? I already hear from people saying, how is the country going to be put together after? Yeah,
I will say Hillary Clinton wins. There are 2 scenarios. One, that there's such a vicious hatred of her that nothing can happen. But I happen to think she was mediocre Secretary of State, but I thought she was an excellent senator. And very good at working around the aisle. McCain, Lindsey Graham, John Barrasso, she was good. And so I see the possibility, whatever is happening out there in the country, and I think there'll be people may check out for a little while because they'll be so exhausted and so down, including a lot of Trump people. And that she may have an opportunity, at least at an elite level, to be effective in some way if she picks issues that sensible Republicans can sign on to. And they're going to want to put a window between, or a curtain between what just happened and what they are going forward. So you could paint an optimistic scenario. So I'm clinging to that against all odds.
But are Trump voters going to want to listen to her, Mark, if she were elected?
What's going to, I think David's point's a good one, Judy. I don't know. I hope so. I hope that's the case. I think it comes down, Hillary Clinton's highest moment in public life was in the United States Senate. I mean, she was good at it. She made 130 trips to New York in the first 18 months. She went to subcommittee meetings. She insisted on sharing the spotlight. She turned down the Sunday. I mean, she was really good. She recognized that this was a collaborative, collegial. And, you hope that there'll be some response in that. I think it comes down to the opposition. I think it comes down to how she does it. I think it comes down to some degree how President Obama handles the transition.
Well, I don't want to jump the gun too much. We still have days to go before this election's over. But we're talking about Hillary Clinton, another WikiLeaks dump this week from what apparently what the Russians hacked from the Democrats, from Hillary Clinton's own campaign manager, John Podesta. Is there anything consequential there that we're seeing in these day after day of email dump?
Yeah, well, I was shocked at how boring it was. Usually, if you're in the height of a campaign, they're sending out private emails, ripping into so-and-so, insulting
SOB.
groups. Yeah, exactly. And there's some stuff in there, like the Catholic, a lot of people who are Catholic thinkers or to become Catholic, they don't want to become evangelicals. They're living in cities, so they become Catholics, but Catholics are a little systematic thinkers. You wouldn't say it's like, it's not like something horrible. And, you know, they're saying like Bill de Blasio, the mayor of New York, is kind of annoying and overbearing, and Governor Richardson from New Mexico can be a bad guy or sort of a pain in the rear. But by the stances of what I expected to get the inside of a campaign, it's pretty mild. I think the Clinton people should be a lot more imaginative.
Mark.
I think, Judy, if there weren't what's going on with Donald Trump's campaign, I think it would be a big story. I think it's hard to make the case reading those emails that Hillary Clinton is a candidate of change. She's very much an establishment candidate. She's a status quo candidate. The open borders, open trade in the hemisphere would have sent some signals and shock waves. And there's a certain moral arrogance, I think, especially on the looking down their nose at Catholics and evangelicals. I think that comes through. The thing about John Podesta, 10 years of his emails, he's incredibly discreet. That's one of the reasons he'd be able to survive. But the candor that comes through is about Hillary Clinton and her inability to apologize, and that's been a problem. She has not effectively, believably apologized for the email, the personal email server, to this moment.
And there was I guess there was a draft that was leaked of a speech that she might have given where she would have been a little bit more direct, but she didn't give that version, and we're still sorting it out.
And the key point, which is why Trump is still in the race, it does indeed make her look like the pinion of the establishment, and which happens to be true. And so there are a lot of people who are supporting Donald Trump today, not because they like sexual abuse, but they just think the country needs some big change, and that she's not in it, and they're willing to swallow a lot, it turns out.
David Brooks, Mark Shields. We'll see you next week.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Judy.
And tune in next Wednesday at 9 p.m. for our coverage of the final presidential debate. Mark and David will be with us. And in the meantime, you can watch all the presidential and vice presidential debates dating back to 1960. Pull up a chair, and that's at our new website, watchthedebates.org.
Senator, you're no Jack Kennedy.
Almost resent Vice President Bush, your patronizing.
Whole binders full of women.
But I've opposed the death penalty during all of my life.
Interact with all the general election debates on our website, watchthedebates.org.